listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast with your host, Andy Plimer. Bringing you up-to-date coaching concepts from the world of rugby. Sharing ideas to make the game better.
All right, welcome to episode number 71 of the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. I'm your host, Andy Plimer, and joining me today is Warren Abrahams. Warren is from South Africa originally, but has been based in England for the past decade. He coaches with the England Rugby Sevens setup, is the former Harlequins Academy coach, holding that role for 8 years, and was the Lithuanian Rugby Federation's head of sevens for a period of time. He is the founder of Coaching for Potential, where his goal is to develop people through coaching, and it's a pleasure to have him on the show. So welcome, Warren.
Thank you for having me, Andy. I'm a big fan of the pod. So, it's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Always stoked to hear that. And I'm glad you've having a listen and taken some things away, hopefully.
No, definitely. There's been some great guests on. A lot of golden nuggets along the way. So, hopefully I can share a few as well today.
Yeah, well, I've got no doubt. And just doing a bit of research for this interview, looking at your backstory was pretty incredible. So I won't spoil it for the listeners, but let's maybe start with your playing backstory and how you ended up in England.
Playing story. I think I had a fascinating sort of a rugby journey in terms of from the playing perspective. Mm-hmm. So obviously from South Africa, as you said in the intro, where we grow up basically with a rugby ball in our lap, so you get stuck straight into it. So I played all through school. After school, transitioned into my local club back home, which is sort of a semi-professional club, Durbanville Belleville. So where I played my junior rugby. So junior rugby in South Africa is under 20s. Okay. That's where you start your junior rugby, basically. Right. So there's no age group rugby. You do all your age group stuff in school. So, played my under 20 rugby down there. Then was quite lucky enough to get a scholarship to Stellenbosch University, so nice. Marty's Rugby Club, who produces the most Springboks probably in South Africa. Mm-hmm. So I was lucky to have a good scholarship there. Otherwise, I didn't know how I would have ever gone to university. And unfortunately, my parents could never afford to send me to university. So I had to work incredibly hard to get that opportunity. Mm-hmm. So I spent sort of four seasons or 4 years with Marty's, and then went back to Durbanville Belleville for one more season before I came over to England, and sort of in between with the club rugby, I was sort of in and out in the provincial stuff with Western Province, in and out sort of around the Sevens stuff as well, with South Africa Sevens. Could never quite get that. I was always chasing that sort of full-time professional rugby player. Gig, could never quite get there. I was quite unfortunate with injuries along the way. For some reason, I had a couple of significant injuries during key moments. I remember one of them, I was about to join the squad, so the Western Province Currie Cup squad. Got an invite to be part of that, and then I pulled my groin off the bone, so out for, I think it was like 18 months or something like that. So I had these significant moments. But along the way, my mom, in these pivotal moments, my mom always used to say, maybe you're just meant to help people. That was like... that was not, sort of
what
like
you want to hear at the time.
not what I want to hear at the time. Like something, a knife through the heart. So she always used to say that. But eventually, I think it was in 2007, couldn't quite, there was sort of a little bit of dispute with Western Province, couldn't get the contract I wanted. Mm-hmm. Very naive and immature probably at the time. I decided I'm going to go to England. didn't quite even know where England really was. I remember booking flights and stuff, and I was sitting on a plane. I was flying into Heathrow, and I'm thinking, where the hell is Heathrow actually? I was on this flight, saved a little bit of money from the sort of the club funds I was getting paid for playing, so saved a little bit of cash up, and I was on a flight over here, had nothing sorted, absolutely nothing. Obviously told my parents everything is fine. Remember sitting on a plane, and I was bricking it at the minute because there was nothing on the other side. But I sort of send my CV out to a lot of different clubs, and as you know, with the rugby community, there's always sort of some people that's interested in what you can offer. So a few Windsor Rugby Club in particular actually sort of invited me. One of the guys, Paul Laidler, he sort of took me in, stayed with him a little bit. The club looked after me, and from there it was word of mouth. And a few clubs paid a bit of interest. So I don't even think I managed to play one game at Windsor Rugby Club during the pre-season. Then got an opportunity to play for Maidenhead Rugby Club in National Free at the time it was. That's also the time when I found out that I couldn't play any higher than National Free because obviously the visa I was on didn't allow me to play rugby any higher, again with the naivety and probably a bit of the immaturity along the way. So yeah, I played for them for a season. It went pretty well. Got another few offers. Went to, I think, Reading Engines, who just literally qualified to go into National One. So I had a few seasons down there with them. During this period, because I knew I couldn't sort of play the highest level I wanted to play in England, I traveled back and forth. So I would do probably for 3-4 seasons, I would do the full English season, then go straight into a full South African season, their version of Championship Rugby, then back into the English season, and then back to South Africa. And then I did a short stint with North Otago in New Zealand, and then came back, and then eventually in 2010 I went back to South Africa because there was a little bit of interest to try and get me back. Signed a decent contract, lasted 5 games, ruptured my ACL and MCL, and that was that. At 27, officially retired for the first time, and then I made this which I call ridiculous comeback at 32 for Richmond Rugby Club. So at this stage, I could play at the highest level. So I made this remarkable comeback for Richmond Rugby Club. Not sure how I did it, but I did it for a full season. The body was absolute bits, but so I just wanted to tick that one off the list. And eventually, and alongside that, I was coaching at Harlequins. I was playing at Richmond. I was coaching Lithuania. So the brain was all over the place. I eventually had to officially retire for the second time. But that's sort of a short version of my playing journey.
Just backtracking a little bit, when you actually first kind of started coaching, some of those early experiences, what were those early experiences, and what were your memories of those?
Those early ones, it was, sort of how the coaching thing came about. I remember in 1995, the moment sort of when Francois Pienaar passed the trophy to Nelson Mandela. That's sort of a significant moment in my life where I thought, I want to either play for South Africa or want to coach South Africa. At the time, I had no concept of coaching, but obviously it just looked pretty cool being being involved in that environment. But I finished school in 2003, and my mate was coaching the school's under 14 team. So he invited me with him to go and do a session with him. Couple of sessions later, he decided coaching is not for him. There I was leading the school's under 14 team. So that was my first experience of coaching. And at the time, it was, as you can imagine, it was all about what I know, what I've learned, and I tried to do everything to try and get that message across. Don't think that message was very effective or efficient at the time. And obviously, the way I coach, looking back now, the way I coached back then, it was everything was what I saw my coaches do. And coming from a South African background, everything is is very much drill based back then. So you can imagine the old Auckland grid with the four cones around the court.
The pop in the middle. Yeah.
These are all the things I was playing around. I tried to be very creative with these four. I used to put loads of different type of cones and get people in different sort of areas, but ultimately I was just doing the Auckland grid in a different version. But the thing that sort of stood out the most for me in those early days was sort of the feeling of helping people. I think the more I got that feeling of not so much about what the results was doing, but how I could make the impact I had on those young people and how I could get them from where they were to the very sort of next level, because a few of those players eventually played a very high level in South Africa and still playing a very, very high level in South Africa. So yeah, sort of those memories, those first memories in terms of that feeling of the impact you have on people. That's probably the thing that sort of stands out the most for me.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a bit of a recurring theme that like we all start somewhere as a coach, and often we're coaching like we were coached, and we're coaching based on our knowledge of rugby as a player, which is usually pretty limited from a playing perspective. So yeah, like I think it's always good just to reflect on those first few sessions and just think, oh man, I wish I could go back and at least change something a little bit. Yeah,
100%. But I remember I was coaching Paul Roos Gymnasium, but Paul Roos is one of the big rugby schools in South Africa. I was the head coach for the D, E, and F team under 50s.
Yeah,
that was but Godsmack when I got that title. But at the time it was a pretty big title. But no, it was C, D, E, and F team. That was my. And if you can imagine how many players the school at that particular age group. But just to get those guys playing in the B and A team, those sort of stuff excite me. So everything about how do I get these guys into those teams. But yeah, no, that's fascinating. Sort of you look back and reflect on the early days of the coaching.
Yeah, and that's a cool mindset shift that you talk about there. It's not about you as a coach and the wins and everything. Sometimes it starts like that. I know definitely for me that I started chasing some wins that, from earlier disappointments. But then when you kind of flip it and you go, okay, I'm actually here in a service role. What can I do for these athletes and how can I better them? I think that's a big turning point for coaches to go into that mindset.
Oh, no, definitely, because that ultimately, if you can, and this is sort of, it builds the foundation of my philosophy. If you can put people at the center of stuff, then you'll ultimately reap some rewards in the long run.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Okay, well, when you were in the UK, you did start doing a bit of coaching in and around London and the outer lying areas. What were some of those clubs that you were involved with there, and what did some of those experiences look like?
Yeah, no, those actually, I had a conversation with someone not long ago about sort of my journey in the UK. I mean, my first role for instance, with Harlequins was a community role because there was no elite roles available. So I was sort of head of the HITS program. So the HITS program is a social inclusion program where you use rugby as a vehicle to sort of encourage people to take up the sport, but most importantly, it was to get people off the street. So yeah, just looking back now and reflecting on it, and I mean, I had to go in a lot of different estates. And just a minute ago, we spoke about Hackney, so we used to do a lot of stuff within Hackney, within the estates, to try and get the guys just to play different sports. So. It was never about rugby, so I had to be very creative with play ideas. So it's how you turn a football into a basketball game, into a rugby game. So all these different type of constraints. And it's only recently when I sat back and go, actually, I had to come up with all these little different type of stuff to keep these kids engaged. Within, or just to get them off the street, basically. So and that was a significant one. So I learned a lot about young people and understanding young people, but most importantly, understanding their stories. So because these guys they don't have a very easy start in life, as many other people would have. So learned a lot about how to work with the young people from that particular role, and then along the way I was coaching a few clubs. I coached Millwall Rugby Club. I don't know if you're familiar with Millwall Football Club.
With Millwall, yeah.
I coached the rugby version. Actually, very good people involved in that club. Very, very good people involved. And again, I was there as a young guy, didn't really know. Or didn't have a really good concept of how to manage a team, how to build a program, how to periodize a season. So for me, it was, I remember taking the role and sitting here going, geez, I've got no clue what I'm going to do, but I've got a bit of an understanding of the game, little bits that I've learned along the way. At this stage, I was progressing quite well with my sort of coaching journey. And then the other thing is you got to have tough conversations with a lot of old grown men who's been around the block for a while, that think they know the game inside out. So that was a nice challenge as well. But for me, ultimately, it was about getting reps under the belt, because I knew it was about the big picture. I had to start somewhere. And I mean, I'm not sure if there's many coaches out there that's sort of in that situation where you'd go to a club that is very, very bottom of the leagues, if you can put it that, plays in the low levels inside in English rugby. But now it was about getting reps under the belt, so I had to go learn the hard way. It was about exploring different ways. It was exploring my leadership model, and also trying to uncover what am I about as a head coach. How do I manage up and down? No doubt I failed badly. I lasted the whole season. I lasted the whole season. The teams sort of stayed up in the league, but no doubt some of the sessions I did wasn't related to what I need to get out on a Saturday. I don't quite think it worked that way. But no, it was about me exploring this leadership model, exploring different ways of coaching, learning about having these tough conversations. So I think it prepped me sort of along the way. I'm now coaching a club again. I'm coaching CS Stags, who's playing in the national freeze at the minute. Again, as extra reps under the belt. It is about it's about running a rugby program. Obviously, that past experiences came in pretty handy this time around. I mean, I got a SOS call about 15, 16 weeks ago where they just fired their coach, and I think there were 13 or 12 at the time when I jumped in. So I had to go and try and save them, and we ended up, I think we finished 8th this season with 5 points from the top 5 or top 6.
Beauty. Job done.
So job done. But yeah, again, it's about getting all these repetitions under the belt, and hopefully it will set me good in the long run.
Yeah, I think, just thinking about my own story and what you're talking about there, I think that's one of the, like, I just love club rugby. I just, like, for so many reasons, but one of the reasons I really like it is, as a coach, you can go into the club and you can, if the environment's right at the club, you can make so many mistakes. And as long as you, as a coach, put your hand up and say, look, that's on me. That's a huge mistake. I'm sorry. Here's how I'm going to get better. I've found all the clubs that I've worked with have been incredibly forgiving, and they want what you want. And I think it's a great place to really grow, before you take on something bigger and with a little bit more of a microscope on you.
Yeah. No, it's and that's the key thing. You have to be vulnerable out there. I remember one of the games where I got it completely wrong. The whole management got it wrong, but I can't stand there and go, you guys get it wrong. So I had to show that level of vulnerability where we go, look, I got it completely wrong. I got the preparation wrong. I got the substitutions wrong. I got perhaps the halftime wasn't as accurate as I wanted to be. But once you show that sort of level of vulnerability there, you get a better buy-in from the group as well, because and it's all about creating this environment where it's a safe environment to fail. So it's all about learning, and if you can demonstrate this and people see this, the sort of level of performance will go a different way as well, because all of a sudden guys would be in situations where they can actually really explore and try different things, because they know you'll get it wrong, but there's no pressure, or no one is going to go, what are you doing there? Because it's very much, they see my mindset where I go, look, fellas, I'm going to try something here today. It might work, it might not work, but if we don't try it, we'd never know.
I had an incident last year. Wasn't really an incident, but just a part of the season where I had to apologise to the players, and a guy came up to me afterwards. He was new to the club, and he said, "Oh, thanks for apologising. I've never had a coach in all my sports ever apologise to me." And I'm like, "Oh man, like something's wrong there if we're going about it that way."
Because coaching is not about having an ego.
No,
you can't be the guy with the biggest ego around the environment. You got to be able to. Many tournaments with England, I would ask the guys. I'd stand up and go, right, what do you want from me in this tournament? Come and give me, and I'd stand. And as you can imagine, these guys wouldn't want to give you feedback because they're worried about saying the wrong stuff in front of the coach. And I'm going, come on, we're all here on this learning journey. What do I need to do to be better? And it's about that level of vulnerability. Once we show that level of vulnerability, the connections you'll make with people would be on a different level, because people will open up more as well.
Totally agree. Cool. All right. Like I mentioned in the introduction, you headed up the Lithuanian Sevens program for a while there. That just sounds like a fascinating experience and opportunity. No doubt some challenges as well. What were some of the big challenges, and what were some of your big learnings from that experience?
It's an amazing experience. I'm grateful for that experience, actually. The way it came about, I got a phone call. Which the guy invited me over to Lithuania. I agreed because it just sounded really cool. Yeah. And I remember putting the phone down and I said to my missus, this guy just invited me to Lithuania. Do you know where Lithuania is? Anyway, I was off. I had to do a little bit of research just to see where it actually is, and it sits sort of in the middle of Poland and Belarus, sort of, and Latvia sits just right at the top as well.
Real rugby heartland.
And I'm off. Off I go to Lithuania, and I remember getting there. Now, bear in mind, I was probably the only black man in Lithuania as well at the time. Yeah. there wasn't many black people, and he gets picked up. The guy as I come out of arrivals, the guy know exactly who I was, calls me over, couldn't speak a word of English, sort of directed me to the car, got me some food. He could manage to get sort of words out in terms of, are you hungry? And I sort of, yeah, let's get some food. He bought me the biggest kebab. It's like the biggest doner kebab, as you can imagine.
Awesome.
And I'll go, oh, this is an interesting
right?
stuff. Anyway, he puts me on a bus to where I need to go meet the group. And literally, I was on this bus for 5 hours, which took from one end of the country to the very far end of the country. So the start was fascinating already. But I eventually got in with the group. Now with the Lithuanian guys, it's phenomenal athletes. It's unbelievable group of athletes I had over there. It was so the sort of start of it was there was about probably 20 players, I would say, which formed your key sort of national sevens players. And I quickly learned about this big language barrier that we had, because obviously English wasn't spoken very well, but a couple of players who it was quite pivotal within the squad who could speak really well. So I had to converse through them to get a better understanding for the group. One of the first things I did with the guys, I just observed first of all, because they had a head coach at the time. Yeah, so it was just about observing what they were doing. I'm sort of slowly embedding myself, and I sort of drip fed in with the sessions, and that sort of, once I got their trust and buy-in, and they got a bit of a feel for me as a person, that quickly transformed into where the head coach went, look, I think you should just be the head coach. And then I could start going, right, this is how we're going to play.
Yeah.
I sort of, this is how the program would look. Brought sort of an SNC coach in for the next camp as well.
Yeah.
But one of the first things I did with the guys, I had them all write, because I had to understand what their reasons were to play for the national team. So I had them all writing a letter. So the question was, what does it mean to play for your national team? That was the question. Oh, they all wrote a letter back in their own broken sort of English. But it was powerful sort of stuff that came out all around, being role models and family and all these type of stuff, leaving the jersey in a better place, growing the game in Lithuanian rugby. So these sort of stuff formed our foundation, our values. All these words made up our values, and that's sort of how we drove the culture and built the program with Lithuania. So the first year was we were in Division A, so which sits just under England and France, Scotland, Ireland. Oh no, Ireland wasn't involved at the time actually. So we managed to win Division A, beat Poland in the finals, and then we progressed on to the Grand Prix, which is like the best teams in Europe, and we were pretty successful there in my last year as well. I think we were sort of 8, 7, 6. We fluctuated around there. But yeah, no, it was all about these phenomenal athletes, and all I had to do, I had to change the perception of how they see the game. So I had to, everything had to become very, so they were athletes, but their sort of basic catch bars and understanding of the game was at a fairly basic level. So all I focused on is turn it into a game-based program where we played hundreds of different types of games at high intensity, and sort of use that approach to improve the individual skills within that as well. And then we just sort of went from the next level to the next level through that sort of pathway. So I had to fight a lot of battles because people weren't seeing sevens. they weren't seeing their version of sevens.
Right.
So because they wanted me to do the kickoffs, play from a scrum, very unopposed type of stuff, and so yeah, it was a lot about managing people's perception based on what they see and where we could go, and then you had to sort of articulate or contextualize the evidence for them so they can see, look, we're actually improving. And the way we actually played then, when we started playing games around I introduced principle-based framework as well, to give them a better understanding of the game, and then we just sort of slowly build it that way. But one of the sort of key things was around halftime, because I found halftime incredibly difficult because I couldn't measure how effective I was. Whether, as you can imagine, sevens game, these guys are under the pump, fatigue. And there's a language barrier.
Yeah.
So I had to come up
You've got like 1 minute.
1 minute to give my message across. So I had to develop this booklet, like 10, 15 things that meant certain stuff. So I would go Ferrari means we need to play the game faster. If I go blue, we got to stay patient and composed. So everything meant something.
That's cool.
So my halftime talks would be something around free, blue, red. We all good?
That's awesome.
Yeah. So this sort of booklet formed our basis of understanding, and even around the reviews and stuff, I had to do little bits around that. But no, and it was obviously coming from a professional background into a very, very amateur environment. You can't go full steam. Yeah. You have to sort of slowly drip feed people's understanding to go, look, have you thought about that? Maybe we can change it this particular way. I remember one of the tournaments in Amsterdam, got to Amsterdam, day one of the tournament, the manager forgot to pack the kit, and he didn't book two of our key players. He didn't think they were needed in that particular tournament, so he didn't book tickets for them. So this type of stuff you have to deal with, and so we quickly had to borrow a bit of kit from other teams just to get out on the field. So, I learned some valuable lessons there. But the most important thing was about you don't need much to be successful. They were under resourced. If you can sort of uncover that level of belief with the people you work with, it's powerful where you can take people. But with just a rugby ball, you don't even need pips, and you make it work.
That's cool. That's a cool message too. All right, and so probably you're doing that and being involved with the Harlequins at the same time. What was that Harlequins role like? You're in there for 8 years. You told us that first initial kind of RDO role that you had there. After that, where did it progress to, and what was your kind of your week look like when you were just finishing up there?
Yeah, so it progressed in from that role. I went sort of into a player development type of role, and then they created this academy role for me, probably about 5 years before I eventually finished at Harlequins. So again, worked with some incredible young talent along the way. A week would be, I was quite lucky. I'd had many cool weeks, if I can put it that way. I would be, for instance, I would have a morning session with England Sevens, and you work with the very best players in the world, and you go back and you go into the academy environment and you work with some of the young talents, like guys like Marcus Smith, Caden Murley, Gabriel Ibatoye, just to name a few of them. So then you go do some individual skill stuff with them. And then on a Monday night, for instance, you'd have, with the academies in particular Harlequins, we had 1 hour on a Monday night to work with our very best under 18s and under 16s from Surrey and Sussex. So you got to do as much as you can possibly to improve the guys individually, wasn't as much about coaching a team, although you have to improve their tactical appreciation. So that would be on a Monday, and during the day you might have to jump in and support some of the senior first team players with their sort of individual skill stuff. I used to fill my week up, so from Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I would be out and about in schools where all our key players are.
Right.
So I'd be delivering loads of either one-on-one sessions, or there might be 2 or 3 guys in that particular school. So I'd be delivering around their stuff, their education stuff. Fridays, you'd normally have your day out. On Saturdays, if there's no fixture, say under Harlequins under 18 fixture, you're out observing the boys in their school environment.
Right.
So you can coach 2-3 hours a week, or you can full. Depends what type of academy coach you are and what type of mindset you have. You can literally fill your week with a large number of sessions, and you can coach for about 6-7 hours a week. So that's sort of how the Harlequins week looked for me. But again, I was lucky because I had the sevens as well, so I would be dipping in and out in terms of where I am with Harlequins or where I am with England. So you could coach, say, Dan Norton in the afternoon or the morning, and then you go coach an under 12 or under 13 player. That's an up and coming young player. So it's quite fascinating. But so I've every week I basically had a whole holistic view of a young player.
Yeah, that's cool. And like I like that, just going from different age groups, but not only that, but going from 15s to 7s. What were some of the coaching 7s, and then suddenly having to go and coach 15s? What were some of the similarities or the differences that you found from that experience?
Now, firstly, it was incredibly hard. It was incredibly hard because let's say you go on a 2-week round tour where you do 2. Say you go South Africa, America, we did. So this is 10, 15 days away, just focusing on 7s, and then instantly have to jump into 15. So you go from one real tactical mindset to the next, where all of a sudden there's more players on the field. You need to now look at different ways to try and find space. So it was quite challenging from that side in the beginning, but the more I sort of started looking at the whole holistic view of how I can make people better within their environments, I sort of approach it slightly different.
Okay.
It was all about how I can make this particular guy, whether he's playing 7s or 15s, better within that particular area. And I used very much with the 7s, it's very much about you're under the microscope with everything we do. Catch, pass, speed, how quick you can make decisions, intelligent decisions in split seconds. So I sort of adopted that mindset within my 15s.
Right.
And I coached the guys very similar to how I would coach a 7s player. Because ultimately, the more skillful I make these guys, the more I can get them to see the game slightly different with more people in front of you. Because ultimately the game is about the principles. It's about go forward, score, get the ball back.
Yeah.
So I was less. I had more clarity as well that way when I coached both sides. So there was I wasn't thinking about I'm coaching 15s or 7s. I just sort of looked at that particular way of how I can make this particular guy better in that area, because it might be his game understanding. Now 15's more complex, but I use the same sort of approach to look at the little bits of details around there. But the exciting bits is I started to see more when I'm coaching 15s. Because as you can imagine, with 7s, low numbers, so you got to search for things. Yeah. So the picture was just better and bigger when I and a little slower. So I saw stuff in fast forward, basically.
Yeah.
See,
What are some examples there that you saw in 15s?
so you can anticipate where things might go. So I'd spend a lot of time looking at the opposition, for instance, because that's what we do a lot from a sevens perspective. But you can sort of predict where they might go next. Where with sevens you can look at that, but it's unlikely they'll go there unless you play someone like South Africa, who's very system orientated.
Right.
So those little bits of detail I started picking up real quick.
Right, cool. That's awesome. All right, and you've mentioned the England Seven set up a few times. What's a bit more detail about your role there, and how does that look at this time of year when the HSBC Sevens is coming to a close? I think it's London and Paris is left on the tour.
Yeah, London, Paris. So it's gonna be pretty big for that top 4 spot for the Olympics, but it's also pretty big for the bottom guys who's fighting that relegation battle.
Yeah.
In terms of how the role sort of looked the last 4 years, so for 3 of the 4 years, my title was the academy coach. So 3 years ago we started an academy. So how it works within sort of Premiership rugby, we have to wait till all the Premiership clubs sort of sign their top players before we can then invite them into what we call the talent ID program. We've actually got our 4th one this coming weekend. So we invite the guys in who's not been signed by their clubs, and then we try and find what we think would be the best sevens players to come into our program. So that was part of my role for the first 3 years. And if you look at the last couple of tournaments, 7 of our starting team come through the academy process. So it's been amazing for us. So then when the World Series guys are away, I will be coaching and making sure these guys are at a decent level. So the programs run as it runs normally: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays off, Thursday, Friday. So they all get normal sessions all through the week, normal S&C, normal speed. So the program just keeps going, and if someone gets called out, we make sure that he's ready to be able to go and perform on a World Series level. This season it was more about I got a bit more of a sort of senior role. We brought in 3 younger coaches with John Brake, who used to play Charlie Hayter, and James Rodwell. So my role was to support these guys with their delivery. We all had specific areas. So Simon Amor would look tactically, attack and defense. I would support him there. I would run the kicking program. James Rodwell would be the kickoffs, and then we've got a contact and a skills guy. And I had to sort of bounce in everywhere, which is again, it was a pretty cool role.
Yeah,
it's not
cool.
a specific, just an attack coach or just a defense coach. I had to, it still gave me that big picture view. I had to be ready to be able to coach any particular thing. You might go, I need you to look at that area for us. And then I'll be jumping into that area. So very much of I sort of looked at it as a facilitator type of role. But then one of the key responsibilities was to run the kicking program and make sure that guys like Tom Mitchell, Dan Bibby, and Will Edwards are at a decent level when they get out there.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really good. So, with a kicking session like that with the sevens guys, what's that going to look like for you? How much of it's going to be kind of drill based, technical compared to some tactical games based stuff?
So for me, very much I work in terms of how a kicking session, for instance, would look for me. I work on what I call a 4D deliberate play model. So it's not zones, but I've sort of put them in zones. So I've got what I call the free zone. the game zone, skill zone, drill zone. So when I do my practice design, it'd be around these areas. So the free area is where all the informal learning happens. So I might have a certain part of the session where I go, Andy, you got 10 minutes there, mate. Do what you need to do. You'd be surprised how much. So I always like to do that around the warm up. You'd be surprised how much of their own warm up type of games they come up with to get themselves in the right mindset. And it's a great opportunity for me to steal a few ideas.
Yeah,
the amount of ideas I've picked up from there. So that's what I call the free area, where it's very much informal learning happens there. And then the game zone. So that's all about constraints, different type of constraints, constraint to afford, make sure the right affordances for the right particular individual within that area. And then the skill zone is all about putting it in context, apply the right amount of pressure on the guys, a little competitive type of stuff. So it might be a two kick out type of stuff. And then the drill zone is, I know a lot of coaches is very much afraid to go in this area. So this area for me, the way I look at it is to uncover the individual process and very much coach the individual within that and focus very much on the process itself. So that's uncovering when someone kicks a kick really well, what makes it good. So very much implicitly coaching that area. So yeah, that's my 4D model. So very much my practice design might be, I might jump into all those areas throughout the session, or I might just go game and skill. So for instance, I've got one of the games I play with the guys is what we call the king of levels. So the pitch, it's got say 22 to halfway. You go 5 meter, 4 meters. So you make channels down the pitch. So you go 5 meter channel, 4 meter channel, 3 meter, 2 and 1. So you got to kick 5 kicks consecutively from drop kicks from the. So this is working on conversions. So you 5 consecutive kicks to over the 22 within the channel. If you hit your 5, you go to 4. So you got to do 4, 3, 2, 1, and so on. But if you miss it at 4, you got to go back to 5 and hit 1 out.
Cool. It's got a video game feel to it.
Yeah, so that type of way. I think Tom Mitchell is the only guy who got to level 1, but then he missed his kick on the last, so he had to go all the way. And by this stage, the time was up. He wasn't happy. He wanted to keep going on, but he had a lot of reps in at this stage. So I had to pull him from it so we can save the growth. Yeah. So yeah, that's very much, and that's my model as well when I coach. When I coach teams, when I coach groups, schools, I very much work off this 4D deliberate play model because it's underpinned by decision making and the principles of play.
All right, and then final question before we do the final 4 questions of the show. You've started up a consultancy business titled Coaching for Potential. Can you tell listeners a little bit about that and what you do with that and what you're offering and kind of how you've been working with coaches in the past?
Yeah, so Coaching for Potential very much stems from my coaching philosophy, my coaching journey. So for me, it's always about unlocking human potential. So this is how it sort of evolved, and then it's sort of anchored within Table Mountain. If you look at my logo, and that reminds me of my journey, where I come from, how I had to work to get where I am today, and then the flatness of Table Mountain is about making people feel on top of the world. The 4 is about family, humility, creativity, and honesty. That's the values that Coaching for Potential forms the foundation of Coaching for Potential. And it's very much in sort of 3 categories, and it's all about helping people, creating a bit of an awareness to make people better at what they're doing, whether that's coaching or whether that's in the business world or wherever that is. Yes, to support that awareness. So the first area I do is I share a lot of information on social media around the way I coach, the way I see the coaching world, which is free content, which is where people can have a look at Instagram, Twitter, where they'll get a lot of, and I'm hoping a lot of different golden nuggets. The second area is the coach development side, is where I deliver a range of different workshops depending on what particular people want. That is from, I'm working with a CrossFit gym, so that's 12 CrossFit coaches on the how of coaching, supporting a few schools in terms of their PE department, and again on the how they deliver, and then I sort of support the guys like Magic Academy, Rusty and Fletch to deliver some stuff. Big legends, good thinking buddies. So I'd support them in terms of delivering loads of different stuff. So it's very much catered to the need of a particular club, particular business, in terms of where I can share my experiences from a high performance background, or my experience in the grassroots, because I had to come through that area as well. And then the third side is the mentoring, where I'm mentoring coaches, groups of coaches individually as well. So those are the three areas, sort of free services I provide, and then the other little sub bits underneath it is I do a lot of one-on-one skill development, group sessions. So that's sort of the practical coaching bits of it. But it's very much tailored to coaching for potential, unlocking human potential, and inspire and develop people.
That's awesome. I'll put all the details in the show notes. But just quickly, if people want to go to the website, what's the website address?
So I'm in the modern world now. Someone once told me, look, if you put a website up, you're gonna have to keep updating it. People don't look at websites.
I wish I knew that 4 years ago.
So I'm using Instagram as my website, so they can get me there at WA Coaching for Potential, or they can hit me up on Twitter at W_Abrams, or on LinkedIn as well as Warren Abrams. So I put a lot of stuff on there, and hopefully I can jump on this sort of social media train that's going.
Cool. You're doing, I had a little peek at your Facebook page as well. You got some really cool, little 1-minute videos where you're interviewing coaches and other professionals. There's some good stuff in there too.
Yeah, there's some cool golden nuggets around. Just posted one with the importance of finding a mentor, or getting yourself.
I watched that one.
So I tend to do loads of different stuff. I'll be firing out sort of a skills clinic over the next few weeks where I'll highlight my top 10 sort of priority skills, and with some good examples of how to deliver and how I use my 4D deliberate play model to bring these skills to life as well.
Epic. Cool. Well, like I said, I'll put all those in the show notes so listeners can check them out. It's awesome, Warren, and definitely that last section I've stolen off you already, so I'm going to be palming that off as my own. So some really great stuff there, and no doubt coaches you mentioned nuggets at the start of the interview, and they've definitely got some out of this one, no doubt. So really appreciate that. But we always end the show with the same final 4 questions. When you were a kid growing up in South Africa, who were some of the players that really turned you on to the game? You mentioned Francois Pienaar, and who were some of the others?
Back then, my hero was Chester Williams. I always wanted to be Chester Williams.
Awesome.
I think that's how I ended up on a wing as well. And obviously from the era that we are, and all the historical stuff within South Africa, he was a massive hero of mine. So I followed his progress intensely.
Cool. So I got a good Chester Williams story. He was sevens coach for South Africa for a little bit. A buddy of mine, shout out to my buddy Andy Cowell. He's a guy I used to coach with. He was over in Hong Kong during the sevens, and somehow he got into the press conference, and he asked Chester Williams, "What are your thoughts on playing Canada tomorrow?" And a few people in the crowd kind of giggled and kind of poo-pooed it, and Chester was super humble, super nice, and said, no one wants to play Canada when it's raining. And sure enough, the very next day, it was an absolute monsoon came down, and Canada ended up winning the game. So it was a pretty cool story, that one. And the highlight of that story was how nice and humble Chester was when he spoke.
Yeah,
to him.
no.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. I met him a few times. It's quite fascinating now as you coach at these type of levels. You meet all these sort of people you looked up to. But no doubt he was a big hero at the time for me.
Cool. And what about now? Who are some of the players you like watching?
There's so many talented players out there at the minute. It's pretty hard to sort of pick one in particular. But if I can build this type of hybrid player that is a bit of a combination of a Ben Smith, a Marcus Smith, Cheslin Colby, a bit of Damien McKenzie in there as well, and maybe a little bit of qualities of maybe a Billy Vanapulu or a Kieran Reid in terms of that physical side. But if I can have that sort of hybrid ideal player in my team, or if I can have 15 of them, I think I'd
wouldn't have to coach.
I could just kick back and watch us win stuff.
No, that's cool. Yeah, some great names there for sure. And what about coaches? You've been around a few. Who are some of the ones that you really like what they're doing at the professional kind of end?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's I've sort of had a privilege to work with Simon Amor the last 4 years. Nice. One of the top coaches I've come across. The stuff I've sort of learned from him, the way he can articulate everything with a why, sort of why we do it. I remember we had to change the way we played last year. How we got that message across and buy-in from the guys was amazing. And also the stuff in terms of how he sees the game, how we can ask tactical questions. I've learned a lot from him. So he's up there with one of the coaches I sort of admire. And then probably one guy back in my playing days, and something that sits very well with me is just Pierre Ribbons used to play for the Bulls. He's got at the time I didn't think he's got real tactical understanding of the game, but the way he made me feel was amazing. I felt invincible every game I went to play. But yeah, so that part from him is something sort of that forms the basis of my coaching philosophy.
Yeah, perfect. No, that's great. And what about in your last question? What about in your local community? Who are some coaches who are doing some really good things that deserve some recognition?
Yeah, there's. I probably do myself a disservice if I name names, but there's some pretty cool young coaches in particular around this area who's in the sort of the community pathway for England Rugby, so they call them CRCs. There's probably 3 or 4 guys like Chris Bedding, Alex Fieldhouse, Tom Redfern. These guys, it's just sort of, I think they, with this modern day world we live in and how social media is affecting us and where change is going, these guys with this new group of young players coming through is going to change the way coaches coach in the future.
Oh, no doubt. I'm just trying to work out Instagram right now, so they're way ahead of us.
Yeah, they definitely, and it's a powerful tool. It's social media is one I've used many times to prepare sevens teams. In particular, the Harlequins team just in the summer where we had no time, and I coached them all through WhatsApp and social media, and no doubt we played in the semi-finals without any preparation.
That's great. That's awesome. Great little last-minute nugget for the listeners. All right, Warren. Well, it's been great talking to you. I think your story's fascinating, and it's a really good message for coaches out there. You definitely didn't get anything handed to you for free, even though you did come through the professional ranks. You've worked incredibly hard, and it's a fascinating story. And I want to thank you for giving up your time, and all the best moving forward.
Oh, no, thank you very much for having me. It's a privilege to share some stuff with you. And like I said, I'm a big fan of the pod. But for any coaches out there, keep taking risks and don't be afraid to fail.
Awesome. Great message. All right. Cheers, Warren.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review via iTunes and keep listening for the next episode. You can also follow us via Twitter at RugbyCoachesCNR or via the website therugbycoachescorner.com. Until next time, keep sharing ideas to make the game better.